To our Science, Technology, and Society instructor, Mr. Arnold Subang, Sir, good afternoon. To my fellow future dentist, good afternoon to each and everyone. I am John Ray P. Madigasman, and I will be your host for the presentation of my group, which is the Group 4, led by Miss Cassandra Ferrer. You are about to see PowerPoint presentation prior to the different topics that we have for this afternoon, some images, and here's some question and answers taken from the different topics that we have to make this class hour not boring but rather interesting. Now, I will present to you the proceedings of our presentation and as well as the reporters together with their designated topics. For the PowerPoint presentation, we have Ms. Jean Carla Estrada, and for the introduction and objectives, we have Ms. Cassandra Ferrer. The scope of genetically modified organisms will be generously presented by Mr. Mark Raymond Rodriguez, and for the scope of genetic modification, I will be the reporter who will present the topic. Next in line is the scope of Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety to be presented by Ms. Farah Alexi Paa. The scope of genetically modified golden rice falls short on life-saving promises, we have Mr. Gerald Abalos Mendoza. For the scope of Nanoworld, Ms. Micaela Fernandez and Ms. Mary Joyce Ragin joined together in presenting the topic. Next, the scope of gene therapy will be presented by Ms. Cassandra Ferrer. For the scope of what we should know about stem cell treatment in the PH, Ms. Colleen Astronomia will be the reporter. The scope of climate change will be presented by Ms. Macy Melody Abalos, while the scope of Earth's movement, we have Mr. Chiron Cristal Bibat. And last but definitely not the least, we have the scope of Milankovitch parameter, which Mr. Rolly Olanday will be our reporter. Now for the references of each topics, Ms. Cassandra Ferrer will be the one to present it. And for the summary and conclusion, Ms. Kayla Jail Heterosa and Ms. Jessalil Albino joined together in presenting it. Let us now start the presentation. Ms. Jean Carla Estrada, may I have the PowerPoint, please? Thank you.
The individual is the basic component of society, wherein the interaction of individuals gives birth to a group. The social groups interact with each other and develop relationships with each other, leading to a society. This study helps us to know the impact of society in our daily lives, and it is significant for us to recognize how social, cultural, and material elements influence the production of new practices, new ways of understanding of contemporary postmodernism, and also to recognize the connection and purpose of science in society. The group of the study also expanded the research to extend our knowledge and ideas. The main objectives of this group is to determine how science affects society, to determine the major potential and realize the impact of nanotechnology on society, to analyze nanotechnology through the conceptual STS lenses, to determine the costs and benefits to society of nanotechnology, to describe gene therapy and its various forms, to explore the opportunities that may be opened by gene therapy in the future, to determine the implication of climate change, and lastly, to determine how climate change happens.
So my topic for today is GMOs, or what stands for genetically modified organisms. So what are these genetically modified organisms? So these are the organisms who had been a product of genetic engineering. So it could either came from a plant, an animal, a microorganism, or antibiotic factor for that matter. So how are GMOs created? So GMOs are created through a process that is known as gene splicing. So this process, gene splicing, is when you take a fragment of the gene of that particular organism that you want to convert into a GMO, and then you design that gene, you analyze it, or you modify it into whatever form that you want to produce from it, and then that gene that you have designed will be now called transgene, because that gene will be transplanted back into that organism and it will be converted into a GMO. Why are GMOs created? So the first thing is to improve the genetic makeup of the organisms. Well, this is true because all of the biologists' goal is to research and attain the perfect gene that will contribute to our society and the environment. So an example of this is the research regarding the finding of the gene that is linked with cancer, and because we want to remove that gene for us humans to not suffer cancer and for us to live longer. So another example is the case in the Californian apple farm, where they use genetic engineering in making the apples tastier and crunchier and won't expire easily. So these apples are now GMOs because their genes are modified by the biologists into that particular trait. Another reason why GMOs are created is for us to understand how the genes of each organisms work. It is because we want to know how these organisms react or respond to a different stimuli if there have been alterations in their genes. And because of this, we would know the do's and don'ts of having some or certain genetic modification for us to prevent lethal and catastrophic biological events. An example of a GMO are the genetically modified chickens. So these chickens are genetically modified into becoming fatter chickens for us to have more meat to eat. So as you can see in the diagram of the before and after, the chickens went into genetic engineering. So the after is the chickens are more fatter compared to the past chickens, which is skinnier. Another example of a GMO are the glowfish, which are genetically modified by the biologists by inserting a gene that could be found in the jellyfish genes called the bioluminescent gene. So that species of the fish that had been inserted by the bioluminescent gene, the scientists believe that if that fish glows, it will indicate the presence of pollution. But unfortunately, this glowfish had been a failure because the scientists had found out that the glowfish had not only been glowing for the presence of pollution, but it also glows for what it eats, such as small particles, etc. So the next example that I'm going to discuss is Dolly the sheep. So Dolly is the first cloned animal, as you can see, and she's also considered a GMO because her embryos are genetically modified. So how Dolly was created was because of the process called gene splicing again. So the original sheep's genes, where Dolly was cloned into, had been taken and it had been modified, and it had been a guide into creating a sheep embryo into, of course, making a full-grown organism or a full-grown sheep. But sadly, Dolly had died only half the lifespan of a normal sheep, which was 14 years, and I guess Dolly had only lived for 7 years of age, and her cause of death had been lung cancer and severe arthritis. Yes, sheep can also suffer from severe arthritis. So fun fact about Dolly is that she was named after the famous country singer Dolly Parton. One of the advantages of creating GMOs are having an enhanced food and drug quality. With the modern technology that encompasses the present generation, it is no doubt that the food that we eat is safer and tastier compared to the past, raising the standard of our living. Another advantage of creating these GMOs is that they offer more new knowledge to genetics, and this is because creating GMOs lets us understand how the genes work, and creating more GMOs equals having more new knowledge, more new understanding, and close to fulfilling the goal of the biologist. So let us go to the disadvantages of creating GMOs. So one of the disadvantages of creating GMOs is that they can break the law of nature. Despite having the promise that genetic modification was said to guarantee better genes and improve organism traits, it still plays as one of the most controversial topics. So releasing a GMO into the wild is very bad, or it is very dangerous, because it would create imbalances within the ecosystem. So one of the disadvantages of creating GMOs is that they can pose a threat to the genes of some species, and it may also include health problems. While others say that genetically modified foods are tastier, there's also this possibility that they could be more dangerous and harmful than we thought, because some unnatural things could lead to bad effects. And also, genetically modifying an organism may lead to permanent and harmful effects to that particular organisms that had been modified, as its offspring could also inherit those harmful effects into their own. So in conclusion, errors are unavoidable. That is why biologists keep on conducting research and creating GMOs to find the right solutions for such biological problems.
Now let's move on to my topic, which is genetic engineering. So before we start, I just wanted you to give the overview of this topic. Okay, so genetic modification, human genetic engineering, relies heavily on science and technology. It was developed to help end the spread of diseases. Today, genetic engineering is used to fight the problems such as cystic fibrosis, diabetes, and other several diseases. Now, genetic modification. So, what does that mean? Genetic modification is also called as genetic engineering or genetic manipulation. It is also the process of altering the genetic makeup of an organism. Now let us have an example for this. On the first image, you can see there the presence of genetic makeup of a zebra and as well as a genetic makeup of kangaroo. Now these two animal species are being the genetic makeup are being extracted. Both of them have been extracted the genetic makeup and then combined together with the use of science and technology, and under the process of genetic engineering or genetic manipulation that we called, you have now that kind of result. Now moving on to the second picture or image, you can see the presence of genetic makeup of a tiger and as well as a dog. Now these two animal species, the tiger and the dog, the genetic makeup of those two species are being extracted and it combines together. Now, like what I have said a while ago, with the use of science and technology, with the process of genetic engineering or called genetic manipulation, you have now that kind of result. Okay, so just always remember that genetic modification always relies on science and technology, and there is the presence of two species that are combined together. The genetic makeup of those species are combined together with the use of science and technology, and the process being done under genetic engineering, you have now that kind of result. That is called genetic engineering. Okay, now let's move on to genetically modified organisms. Okay, so it is in the form of plants, animals, microorganisms, or other organisms where genetic makeup has been modified. So this is just a recap or addition to the report of Mr. Mark Raymond Rodriguez a while ago, and I just wanted to share my knowledge about this and as well as the research that I have been browsed on the internet. So at some point it is connected, the genetically modified organisms and the genetic modification at some point are connected together, and it plays a vital role in between. Now, genetically modified organisms are present in the food known as genetically engineered foods or bioengineered foods. So I will give you an example for this. So basically, when we talk about genetic engineered food or bioengineered food, there are two types. You have the GMO and the non-GMO. So when we talk about GMO, it is any whole food whose genetic material has been altered using genetic engineering techniques. It means these kind of foods have gone with the process of. And when we talk about non-GMO foods, these are foods or any whole foods or processed food made without the use of GMO food or ingredients. Now, these foods are not gone through the process of genetic engineering or so-called genetic manipulation, and the science and technology are not being involved. This is just a natural food. There is no presence of GMO or the presence of genetic engineering. To add up more about genetic modification, I will give you the three types. Now you have the microinjection, electroporation, and polycationic neutralization. First, we will discuss about microinjection. So microinjection refers to the injection of DNA into the nucleus of uncored cells. So this is the injection of DNA to the uncored cells. As you can see on the picture, you can see there that the needle has been attached inside that circle, that cell, and being introduced to the uncored cell. While when we talk about electroporation, it refers or it is where the DNA is being introduced through the cell membrane pores by pulse electrical charges. With the use of needles and the use of our pores in our skin, the process of injection, now the DNA is being introduced. It is possible to introduce the DNA through our cell membrane, and the possible ways or the ways that we can use or the scientists can use is through injection of plasmid or electrode insertion on, and also electroporation that we call. And lastly is the polycationic neutralization. It refers to the presence of cell membrane and as well as the DNA, which it will be introduced together, nor it will be combined together to make an improvement for passive uptakes. As you can see in the picture that I have been inserted in this video, let us assume that the negative particles, which is being represented by that yellow circle with that, plus the cationic polymer as that string-like picture are being combined together. The negative particles and the cationic polymer are being combined together. What does the arrow pointing out is the result? As you can see, it is being introduced and combined together. The negative particles and the cationic polymer are being combined together. That is the result. And this is what we call polycationic neutralization. Moving on, the genetic modification is also present in the field of agriculture. Now you have there the advantage and disadvantage of genetic modification in agriculture, but let us first discuss the advantage of genetic modification in agriculture. First, increase crop yields. Second, reduce costs for food or drug production. Third, reduce need for pesticides, enhanced nutrient composition and food quality, resistance to pest and disease, greater food security, and medical benefits to the world's growing population. As you can see, those characteristics are all and highly observed in the field of agriculture. As the science and technology are being enhanced in today's generation, those characteristics are possible to happen, and you have the assurance as well. With the use of agriculture and the genetic modification, it is now possible to make uh, new discoveries that can help our country or our economy to be one of the thriving and growing nation all over the world. Okay, so let's move on to the disadvantage of genetic engineering in line with the agriculture, in the field of agriculture. First, you have there genetic engineering could create changes in plants or animals that may cause unexpected, I should say, allergic reaction in people. Inserting genes from an animal into a plant could create social or spiritual problems for some lifestyles. It is even possible that biotechnology could cause organisms to become toxic to humans. Now, as we all know, genetic engineering or genetic manipulation is not 100% guaranteed that it is safe, and you already know what are the characteristics that this new discovered species possess. And it is true that with the presence of genetic modification in the field of agriculture, there is the possibility, a high possibility, that could create a negative effect to both humans, plants, and animals. Because basically, we don't have the assurance, and even our scientists that manipulate everything, they don't have the guarantee that they already know what are the characteristics of that newly discovered species possesses. And without the assurance to the characteristics that the newly discovered species possesses, they will become a threat nor give a negative impact to both humans, animals, and even in plants. Because basically, those scientists that created them don't know or don't have the assurance, the 100% assurance that the characteristic that they are possessing is already discovered, nor it has been being evaluated and gone through a systematic process. That's why the genetic modification in line with the field of agriculture has a both advantage and disadvantage. Moreover, the environment is also affected with the presence of genetic modification. It says that new organism or new discovered organism created by genetic engineering or genetic manipulation could present ecological problem. One cannot predict the changes that a genetically engineered species would make on the environment. So like what I have said a while ago, our scientists don't have the assurance that they already observe and highly observe or have 100% assurance about the characteristics that this newly discovered species possesses. Basically, this genetic engineered or genetically engineered species don't have or don't gone through a systematic process of observation and examination in determining their characteristics, their specific aspects, as they are being produced through the use of or through the presence of this science and technology together with the genetic engineering that we have in today's generation. That's why it also affects the environment. And humans are also being affected. Why? Because it says here there are no clues to where functional genes are being placed. They may even replace the important genes instead of mutated genes. Genetic engineering could also create unknown side effects or outcomes. As like what I have told you a while ago, that the newly discovered species that has been produced by genetic engineering with the use of technology and science, our scientists or the one or the personalities who created them don't have the assurance for what characteristics that they possesses or what aspect they embody. They don't have the assurance because they don't yet gone through a systematic observation or examination to determine what they possesses or what are the characteristics that they have as they are being produced by science and technology. And this is the end of my presentation. I hope that you guys got a knowledge and I have cleared the idea of genetic modification. Thank you very much for listening and let's move on to the next reporter. Bye bye.
Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. The Protocol of International Agreement, which aims to ensure the safe handling, transport, and use of living modified organisms, resulting the modern biotechnology that may have adverse effect on biological diversity, taking also into the account risks to human health. It is also known as the Biosafety Protocol, was adopted in January 2000. After a few delays, the Cartagena Protocol was eventually adopted on 29 January 2000. Also, the objective of the protocol is to ensure an adequate level of protection in the field of the safe transfer, handling, and use of living modified organisms that may have adverse effect on the conservation and use of the biological diversity, taking also into the account risks to human health. So next, we have the LMOs, or the living modified organisms. LMOs, or living modified organisms, is defined as the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety as any living organisms that possess a novel combination of genetic materials obtained through the use of modern biotechnology. Here are the examples of the genetically modified foods. We have corn, rice, tomatoes, ribs, honey, cotton, soybean, sugarcane, colonna, potatoes, cattle, papaya, and squash. As I have mentioned earlier, tomato is one of the genetically modified food. So, it is the genetically modified to have a longer shelf life, showing that ripening and softening of the tomato, the DNA used to modify the tomatoes could change the DNA of a person eating the tomato. Common LMOs include agricultural crops that have been genetically modified for the greater productivity or for resistance to pests or disease. Parties and non-parties of Cartagena. The governing body of the protocol is called the Conference of the Parties to the Convention, serving as the meeting of the parties to the protocol, also the COP or the MOP. The transboundaries movements between parties and non-parties must be carried out in the manner that is consistent with the objective of the protocol. So the main focus or the main function of this body is to view the implementation of the protocol and make decisions necessary to promote its effective operations. Parties are also required to encourage non-parties to non-parties to adhere to the protocol and to contribute information to the biosafety clearinghouse.
Genetically modified golden rice falls short on life-saving promises. Golden rice is a variety of rice or rice sativa produced through genetic engineering through biosynthesis beta-carotene, a precursor of vitamin A and the edible parts of rice. It is intended to produce a fortified food to be grown and consumed in areas with shortage of dietary vitamin A. A deficiency which each year is estimated to kill 670,000 children under the age of 5 and cause an additional 500,000 cases of irreversible childhood blindness. Rice is a staple food crop for over half of the world's population, providing 30 to 72% of the energy intake for people in Asian countries, and becoming an effective crop for targeting vitamin deficiencies. Advantage and disadvantages. Many anti-GMO activists actively voice potential negative consequences of planting and consuming golden rice. Risks include potential allergies or potential antibiotic resistance. There is also the possibility that genetically modified foods enter the food supply inadvertently from planting GMO crops near non-GMO crops. Without knowledge from the consumer, as genetically modified crops would have to be grown, there are concerns about the effect they would have on surrounding environment. Therefore, ethical concerns arise from the unknown effect on the environment. Could the crops negatively impact the environment and possibly its biodiversity? A possible threat to biodiversity arises when genetically modified crops breed with wild species. Another issue concerns the spreading, escaping, or crossing of genes from genetically modified crops. This could create unwanted resistance of pesticides or herbicides, or could increase the strength of weeds. As with human safety concerns, there is the possibility that other animals that eat genetically modified crops will be affected. This could create inadvertent risk to these species, harming them and possibly biodiversity too. Studies of the long-term impacts of planting and or consuming golden rice have been minimal because it would take decades to really learn anything. The Golden Rice Project first introduced in 1999 when two professors Ingo Petrarchus and Peter Bayer proposed their project to Rockefeller Foundation to genetically engineer rice to increase its nutrients. Rockefeller Foundation supported their goal to provide a sustainable biofortification approach to combat vitamin A deficiencies in developing countries. Vitamin A deficiencies is prevalent in developing countries whose diets are dependent on rice or other micronutrient-poor carbohydrate foods which do not contain vitamin A. The World Health Organization estimates that about 250 million preschool children are affected by VOD, and about 2.7 million children die because of the deficiency. Golden rice has the promise to help prevent millions of deaths and to alleviate sufferings of children and adults afflicted with VOD and micronutrient malnutrition in developing countries. In addition, allowing further golden rice development may open up more possibilities of enhancing genetically modified, biofortified crops to combat micronutrient malnutrition in developing countries. This is the main benefit of golden rice. Supporters of the project believe that the improvement of public health in developing countries trumps the risks associated with the golden rice. Even though these very minimal risks are still discussed in popular discourse, many scientists now agree that genetically modified crops are just as safe to consume and to plant as traditional crops. On a different note, there are possible socio-economic implications that genetically modified foods can have on developing countries. Since for-profit companies back genetically modified foods, there is the fear of negative effects of small-scale farmers. Since for-profit companies back genetically modified crops, there is a fear of negative effects on small-scale farmers because market dominance may arise. This could negatively impact poor farmers who cannot compete with large biotech companies for land and the share of the rice market. International Rice Research Institute's mission is to objectively evaluate the new proposed resolution that biotechnology may offer the rice industry, and they work with the National Agricultural Research System to test the sustainability of strategies in different countries. In their analysis, the IRRI has deemed golden rice an exciting new option provided by the biotechnology. A clinical trial was conducted in 2009, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, testing the effectiveness of vitamin A conversion for golden rice in human children in China. The results supported the effective conversion of vitamin A in humans. The results showed the potential for golden rice to have more advantageous bioconversion rate compared to any other biofortified crop, and while supplying 50% of recommended dietary allowance of vitamin A from a cup of rice consumed daily.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ms. Fernandez and I are the fifth reporter for today discussing about nanotechnology. So, what comes to your mind if you hear the word nano or nanotechnology? Probably science, robots, life-saving medical treatments, beauty and cosmetics, small particles can be a threat to security and privacy, and engineering and chemistry. Well, you're kinda right. Yet, let us expound your knowledge about nanotechnology and its meaning, significances, rules in our lives, advantages and disadvantages as science and its uses. Nanotechnology is a field of research and innovation concerned with building things, generally materials and devices, on the scale of atoms and molecules. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter, 10 times the diameter of a hydrogen atom. The diameter of a human hair is, on average, 80,000 nanometers. At such a scale, the ordinary rules of physics and chemistry no longer apply. For instance, materials' characteristics such as their color, strength, conductivity, and reactivity can differ substantially between the nanoscale and the macro. Carbon nanotubes are 100 times stronger than steel but 6 times lighter. Understanding, shaping, and combining matter at the atomic and molecular scale is called nanotechnology. Nanotechnology encompasses science, medicine, engineering, computing, and robotics at this scale, called the nanoscale. Nanotechnology offers the potential for new and faster kinds of computers, more efficient power sources, and life-saving medical treatments. One of its possible disadvantages are in energy and electronics. Nanotechnology may transform the ways in which we obtain and use energy. In particular, it's likely that nanotechnology will make solar power more economical by reducing the cost of constructing solar panels and related equipment. Energy storage devices will become more efficient as a result. Nanotechnology will also open up new methods of generating and storing energy. Aside from its importance and use, well, nanotechnology has a disadvantage and advantages. Now, let's find out and know it one by one. Now you already know the meaning of nanotechnology, let's find out its advantages and disadvantages. Nanotechnology has the potential to bring major advances in medicine. Nanobots could be sent into a patient's arteries to clear away blockages. Surgeries could become more faster and more accurate. Injuries could be repaired cell by cell. It may even become possible to heal genetic conditions by fixing the damaged gene. Nanotechnology could also be used to refine drug production, tailoring drugs at the molecular level to make them more effective and reduce side effects. Potential disadvantages include economic destruction and possible threats to security, privacy, health, and in the environment. Some of the most extravagant negative future scenarios have been debunked by experts in nanotechnology. For example, the so-called gray goose scenario, where self-replicating nanobots consume everything around them to make copies of themselves, was once widely discussed but is no longer considered to be a credible threat. It is possible, however, that there will be some negative effects on the environment as potential new toxins and pollutants may be created by nanotechnology. It is likely that nanotechnology, like other technologies before it, will cause major changes in many economic areas. Although products made possible by nanotechnology will initially be expensive, luxury, or specialist items, once availability increases, more and more markets will feel the impact. Some technologies and materials may become obsolete, leading to companies specializing in those areas going out of business. Changes in manufacturing processes brought about by nanotechnology may result in job losses. Nanotechnology raises the possibility of microscopic recording devices, which will be virtually undetectable. More seriously, it is possible that nanotechnology could be weaponized. Atomic weapons will be easier to create and novel weapons might also be developed. One possibility is the called smart bullet, a computerized bullet that could be controlled and aimed very accurately. These developments may prove a boon for military, but if they fell into the wrong hands, the consequences will be dire. Nanotechnology has importance to our lives that it is held as having the potential to increase the efficiency of energy consumption, help clean the environment, and solve major health problems. It is said to be able to massively increase manufacturing production at significantly reduced cost. Products of nanotechnology will be smaller, cheaper, lighter, yet more functional and require less energy and fewer raw materials to manufacture.
The importance of nano, it is helping to considerably improve, even revolutionize many technology and industry sectors, information technology, homeland security, medicine, transportation, energy, food safety, and environmental science, and among many others. It is designed to provide a novel and improve approach to cancer diagnosis and treatment, since biological process including events that leads to development of cancer occur on a nanoscale at the surface of an inside cell. It is driven by companies' ongoing quest to improve existing products by creating smaller components and better performance materials, all at a lower cost. Science deals with materials that are very small using specialized microscopes and other nano devices. It is the study of structures and materials on an ultra small scale and the unique and interesting properties these materials demonstrate. So, nanoscience is a cross disciplinary, meaning scientists from a range of fields including chemistry, physics, biology, medicine, computing, materials science, and engineering are studying it and using it to better understand our world. Nano is can be used in the following. So first, medicine. It is developing customized nanoparticles, the size of molecules that can deliver drugs direct to disease cells in your body. Second, electronics. It holds some answers from how we might increase the capabilities of electronics devices while we reduce their weight and power consumption. Third, food is having an impact on several aspects of food science, from how food is grown to how it is packaged. Fourth, it's fuel cell. It is used to reduce the cost of catalyst used in fuel cells to produce hydrogen ions from fuels such as methanol and improve efficiency of membranes used in fuel cells to separate hydrogen ions and other gases such as oxygen. Fifth, it's a solar cell. Companies have developed nanotech solar cells that can be manufactured at significantly lower cost than conventional solar cells. Six, the batteries. Companies are currently developing batteries using nanomaterials. One such battery will be as good as new after sitting on the shelf for decades. Another battery can be recharged significantly faster than conventional batteries. Space nanotechnology, it may hold the key of making space flight more practical. Advancements is nanomaterials make lightweight spacecraft incapable for the space elevator is if it's possible by significantly reducing the amount of rocket fuel and required. The next is another is fuels. Nanotechnology can be addresses and the shortage of fossil fuels such as diesel and gasoline by making the production of fuels from low-grade raw materials economical, increasing the mileage of engines, and making the productions of fuel from normal raw materials and more efficient. The next is better air quality. Nanotechnology can improve the performance of catalysts used to transform vapors escaping from other cars or industrial plants into harmless gases. The next is better water quality. It is used to to develop solutions to three very different problems in water quality. One challenge is the removal of industrial waste, such as cleaning solvent. The other is sporting goods. If you're a tennis or golf fan, you'll be glad to hear that even sporting goods have wandered into nano. Current nanotechnology application in the sports arena include increasing strength to tennis rackets, filling any imperfections in club shaft materials, and reducing the rate at which air leaks from the tennis ball. Lastly is the fabric. It is making composite fabric with nano-sized particles or fibers allows improve the fabric properties without significant increases in weight, thickness, or stiffness as might have been the case of previous use techniques.
Gene therapy is the introduction of genes into existing cells to prevent or cure a wide range of diseases. For example, suppose a brain tumor is forming by rapidly dividing cancer cells. The reason this tumor is forming is due to some defective or mutated gene. The therapy chosen for this case will be to use a herpes virus that has had its virulence removed, rendering it harmless. The virus is still able to insert its genetic material into the target cells. The virus is then taken and injected into mouse cells, where it makes now containing the virus are then injected into the brain containing the tumor. Once inside the brain, the virus seeks out the target tumor cells and invades them. The tumor will now start to produce herpes enzymes because the virus has inserted its genetic material into the tumor cells. Now, a physician can treat the patient with a herpes curing drug that will destroy the tumor cells along with the mouse cells that are producing the herpes enzymes. The example of gene therapy. The first human to receive gene therapy treatment was a 4-year-old girl with severe immune deficiency disease. This disease is caused by a faulty gene that fails to produce a vital enzyme. In the therapy procedure, they extracted some of the girl's white blood cells. Then they exposed them to a genetically engineered virus that had lost its virulence but still carried normal versions of the gene that was not functioning correctly in the girl. Once back inside the girl's bloodstream, the cells began producing the proper enzyme, although the girl still needs follow-up treatment. She now lives relatively normal life following the gene therapy. This is one of the success stories of gene therapy.
What are the advantages of gene therapy? The disease may be eradicated for a person and their offspring in the future. Gene therapy holds the promise of curing and preventing genetic illnesses like cystic fibrosis, as well as a potential cure for heart disease and cancer. Thus, gene therapy could be useful in the treatment of multiple diseases. Recent studies suggest that a rare form of blindness called Leber's congenital amaurosis could be treated with it. And there is also data to suggest that Parkinson's disease responds well to gene therapy. As we get to know the overall capabilities of what gene therapy can do, there could be hundreds of different diseases that are treatable with this approach. However, gene therapy has also its disadvantages. Multi-gene disorders such as high blood pressure, Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, and diabetes, which are caused by the combined effects of several genes, are a concern and possibility. There could be also unwanted immune system reaction. When the white blood cells attack the newly introduced genetic material, it is not unusual for a patient to experience health issues like inflammation, dizziness, and headaches. In severe reactions, It is even possible for the immune response to target the body's organs and cause them to fail. So what is the role of gene therapy? Gene therapy improves the health of each individual's body, and it will become more relevant to medical practices. And doctors will find it useful to recognize the basic concepts and techniques that compromise the therapeutic intervention. When a doctor can replace or deactivate faulty cells that led to detrimental conditions, then the individuals and their families can find the relief they require to live a more fulfilling life.
What we should know about stem cell treatment in the Philippines. Stem cells are cells with the potential to develop into many different types of cells in the body. Maraming iba't ibang uri ng stem cells sa ating katawan, and lahat ng iyon ay may responsibility sa atin. Tulad ng heartbeat, brain, paglilinis ng dugo, pagkapalit ng cells sa ating balat at iba pa. And pinaka-importante po ng gawain ng stem cells ay gumawa pa ng panibago at iba't iba pang uri ng cells. Example na dyan is yung stem cells sa ating skin. Pwede pa siya gumawa ng panibagong skin cells at marami pang iba. Two types of stem cells: embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells. Embryonic stem cells. Ito yung mga makikita natin sa baby or bagong panganak na sanggol. Ang embryonic stem cells ay nagde-develop ng organs and tissues sa kanilang katawan. Ang embryonic stem cells ay maaari din po mag-grow para magamit din ng iba't ibang cells. Unlike sa blood stem cells, hindi na siya pwedeng gumawa ng ibang cells kundi blood stem cells lang. Ang embryonic stem cells ay pwede pa siya makagawa ng cells para sa blood, bones, skin, brain, and different parts of our body. Embryonic stem cells, also known as pluripotent or induced pluripotent stem cells. Pareho lang ang uses ng pluripotent stem cells sa embryonic stem cells. Ang differences lang nila is yung pluripotent stem cells ay hindi na kailangan ng embryo. Dahil dito, maiwasan ang ethical issues sa paggamit ng embryonic stem cells. Maaaring magamit ang pluripotent stem cells sa mga transplant na stem cells. Ang pluripotent stem cells ay makukuha at may babalik sa sariling katawan ng pasyenteng nangangailangan. Ma-avoid din to yung mga negative reactions ng mga dating stem cells sa mga panibagong stem cells na nanggaling sa transplant. Adult stem cells, also known as somatic stem cells, they can found in children as well as adults. Adult stem cells are undifferentiated cells found throughout the body that divide to replenish dying cells and regenerate damaged tissues. Adult stem cells can be isolated from a tissue sample obtained from an adult. Adult stem cells reside along with somatic stem cells in many tissues and organs, including peripheral blood, blood vessels, bone marrow, skeletal muscle, teeth, skin, liver, ovary, testes, brain, and heart. Importance of stem cells. Stem cells are important for living organism for many reasons. In 3 to 5 day old embryo, called a bloctosis, the inner cells give rise to the entire body of the organism, including all of the many specialized cell types and organs such as the heart, lung, skin, sperm, egg, and other tissues. Kaya din importante ang stem cells dahil kapag nakakasakit tayo, nasisira din at namamatay ang ating mga cells. Sa ganitong instances, nagiging active ang mga stem cells na siyang pumapalit din sa mga nasira o sa mga patay ng cells. And dahil dito, kaya tayo nananatiling strong and healthy at naiiwasan yung mga mabilisang pagtanda. Pros and cons of using various stem cells. Pros: trans-differentiate and reprogramming of these cells is possible but it is not well studied. Success has already been demonstrated in various clinical applications, though to be less likely to be rejected if used in transplant. Cons: cannot be grown for a long period of time in culture, usually a very small number in each tissue, making them difficult to find and purify. Induced pluripotent stem cells, pros: can maintain and grow for 1 year or more in culture. Establish protocols for maintenance in culture. Cons: process to generate ESC lines is inefficient. Unsure whether they would be rejected if used in transplant. Therapies using ESC avenues are largely new and much more research and testing is needed.
Climate change. Climate change is described as a long-term shift in the average weather patterns that have come to characterize the Earth's local, regional, and global climates. So these modifications have a wide variety of observed effects that are associated with the world. Climate change is the change of climate or weather that due to the increases of greenhouse gases that are warming the world. So it causes disasters like of heat wave, flood, and drought that can cause illness or death. So as the world's temperature rises, diseases will increase such as dengue, diarrhea, malnutrition, and so on. According to the study, the two causes of climate change are natural climate change around the world in recent times. It is the collective effect of energy from the sun, the rotation of the earth, and the heat coming from underground that raises the temperature or heat in the air that envelopes, and human activities that produce an increase in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So greenhouse gases trap global heat. The emission of carbon dioxide by gasoline-powered vehicles that cutting down of the trees that would otherwise remove carbon dioxide from the air, and the decomposition of organic matter that produce methane or other type of greenhouse gases are some of causes of climate change. So what is advantages and disadvantages of climate change? So the advantages is increases heat, drought, and insect outbreaks, all linked to climate change, have increases wildfires, declining water supplies, reduced agricultural yields, health impact in the cities due to heat, and flooding and erosion in coastal areas are additional concerns. So, climate change ensures that the continuation of century that can renew few natural resources. It is also a way to maintain the long process of evolution in the organism living in the world. So, and for the people, it may be because of climate change that they are able to find different ways and technologies so that we can achieve optimal consumption and nothing is wasted. So the disadvantages of climate change is scientists have predicted that long-term effect of climate change will include a decrease in sea ice and an increases in permafrost thawing, an increase in heat waves and heavy precipitation, and decreases water resources in semi-regions. Because the adaptation of a few organisms is a long process, it also has a determinal effect on a larger scale. So, just as the absence of one type of organism in bio can actually impact other organisms that depend directly or indirectly on these organisms, the result of the terraformation of areas due to climate change will also be detrimental to a few things that do not adapt from the usual. Role of climate change. So climate change affects biodiversity and habitats and also exacerbates other pressures such as deforestation, overexploitation, invasive species, habitat fragmentation, degradation, and loss. For me, climate change is normal because maybe it is also due to the increase in population and the increase in people burning and cutting down trees. As I said, there are bad and good causes of climate change in our world, but of course, everything that too much is harmful. Important. So weather and climate offer rain, snow, and other kinds of precipitation, which is perhaps the most evident and significant advantage. Importance, but despite the bad effects it has on certain and where we live, there are some things where climate change really helps. So, climate change ensures that the continuation of century that can renew few natural resources. It is also a way to maintain the long process of evolution in the organism living in the world. So, and for the people, it may be because of climate change that they are able to find different ways and technologies so that we can achieve optimal consumption and nothing is wasted. So, science of climate change. The world climate refers to the long-term weather trend in a specific location. Climate is described by some scientists as the average weather for a specific region and time span. Typically, over a 30 years period, it's just an average weather patterns for a specific location. Uses reducing greenhouse gas emissions by phasing out fossil fuels and replacing them with more effective and sustainable low-carbon energy sources, as well as improving how we generate food and manage land.
Earth's movement around the Sun. The Sun is the nearest star to Earth and has a diameter 100 times greater than Earth's. The Earth is the planet where we humans, among other species, live and thrive. The Earth is the third planet closest to the Sun in our solar system. Earth orbits or follows a path around the Sun, making one complete revolution every 365.24 days due to the Sun's gravitational pull. As Earth revolves around the Sun, it rotates or spins on its rotational axis or an imaginary line on which the Earth rotates. It is where our whole year is based from, and we derive our day and night time by how it rotates while making a complete revolution. The tilt of Earth's rotation axis combined with Earth's motion around the Sun causes the seasons to change. Earth's seasons can be explained simply by the hemisphere, which is tilted towards the Sun, receiving more daylight hours than the hemisphere tilted away from the Sun. Earth's tilt causes the Sun's radiation to strike the hemisphere at different angles. The hemisphere tilted toward the Sun receives more total sunlight than the hemisphere tilted away from the Sun. The Earth's motion is of prime importance simply because it holds all life on Earth. We get our daily needs thanks to the solar energy emitted by the Sun. Our concept of time is also based on the rotation and revolution of the Earth, where it can be divided between day and night, and the calendar is based on the estimated time of the Earth to completely revolve around the Sun. Without the Earth's motion, seasons would not be possible, which could wipe out all species. All concepts of time and space would be inessential, leaving only utter darkness on Earth.
Milankovitch parameter. A century ago, Serbian scientist Milutin Milankovitch hypothesized the long-term, collective effects of changes in Earth's position relative to the Sun are a strong driver of Earth's long-term climate, and are responsible for triggering the beginning and end of glaciation periods, which is the Milankovitch cycle. Milankovitch cycle. In this activity, you will learn about the eccentricity, obliquity, and precision, and how they change through time, and you will also learn how this changes the Earth climate. So, the first cycle is the eccentricity. Earth encounters more variation in the energy that it receives from the Sun when Earth's orbit is more circular. So, when we look at eccentricity, we're talking about the shape of Earth's orbit. So, over a period of 400,000 years, the shape of Earth's orbit changes from circular to elliptical. Elliptical is like an oval shape. Eccentricity is the reason why our seasons are slightly different in lengths, with summers in northern hemisphere currently about 4 to 5 days longer in winter, and spring is about 3 days longer than autumn. So the second cycle is the obliquity. The angle of Earth axis is tilted with respect to Earth's orbital plane, known as the obliquity. The tilt of the Earth axis varies between 22.2 degrees and 24.5 degrees. The greater the tilt is, the more solar energy the poles receive. So when we study about obliquity, we're talking about the axial tilt. Earth tilt axis causes seasons. So throughout the year, different parts of the Earth receives the Sun's most direct rays. So the third cycle is the precession. A gradual change or wobble in the orientation of Earth axis affects the relationship between Earth's tilt and eccentricity. So precession makes Earth wobbles like a spinning top. This wobble is due to tidal forces caused by gravitational influences of the Sun and Moon that cause Earth to bulge at equator, affecting its rotation. This determines the timing of the season. Axial precession makes seasonal contrast more extreme in one hemisphere and less extreme in the other. What causes an ice age? The onset of an ice age is related to Milankovitch cycles, where regular changes in the Earth's tilt and orbit combine to affect which areas of Earth get more or less solar radiation. Ice age doesn't come out of nowhere. It takes 1,000 years for an ice age to begin. An ice age is triggered when summer temperatures in the northern hemisphere fail to rise above freezing for years. This means that the winter snowfall doesn't melt, but instead builds up, compresses, and over the time compact or glaciate into ice sheets. Why is the melancholic cycles is important? These cycles affect the amount of sunlight and therefore the energy that Earth absorbs from the sun. They provide a strong framework for understanding long-term changes in Earth's climate, including the beginning and end of ice age throughout Earth's history.
The impact of society in our daily lives shapes our individuality as a person, from the way we see the changes of our society and from the way we adapt to the transitions of our society. Science and technology have played a significant role in the way we live our lives today. Utilizing our knowledge of the world, we have altered it in ways that have benefited us. It is through science, with the process of scientific experiments, that the people before us are capable of inventing and innovating the technologies that we use today. Social issues motivate scientific research that leads to the discovery of more advanced technology, thereby continuously shaping human history. In this report, we have tackled the factors that greatly affect society and have an impact on the way our life works. We have GMOs that are produced through genetic engineering, and this genetic modification is done by the use of science and technology. The modified organisms made from modern biotechnology are then under the Cartagena Protocol, which secures the safe transport, handling, and utilization of the organisms. An example of a GMO would be the golden rice that is genetically engineered to manufacture beta-carotene to aid malnutrition in countries. Nanotechnology also has an impact on society because it involves science, medicine, engineering, computing, and robotics, as it offers advanced computers, efficient power sources like solar power, and medical treatments. Gene therapy is also an advanced medical treatment because in this process, the genetic material could be transferred into a patient's cell to cure an existing disease. Another form of treatment that could bring life-changing impact would be the stem cell treatment that is done to treat and prevent diseases by using stem cells. The current predicament that society suffers from is climate change. Stronger and more devastating typhoons and weather calamities have been the consequences of changes in weather caused by global warming. Climate has a major impact on every aspect of our lives, livelihood, well-being, and future. We live on the planet Earth, which is the third planet closest to the Sun in the solar system, and revolves around it for a whole year. The Earth is dependent on its motion of revolution and rotation because it holds all life. Solar energy emitted by the Sun is essential, and our concept of time and space relies on Earth's movement. In relation to climate change and Earth's movement would be the Milankovitch parameters, which tries to explain the differences in climates and temperatures around the world over time based on changes in Earth's orbit, axial rotation, and axial tilt. Society includes all people living in a community or territory, and in our case, we are inhabitants of Earth. Science and technology have completely changed the way we live, which is why it has shaped human history. Science and technology are a product of human necessity, and as time progresses, technology continues to change, so are society, politics, and the economy.
The evolution of science and technology greatly contributes to the formation and betterment of our society in today's living. Technology has come so far and is advancing more and more each day. It is used for many things like communication, shopping, education, and more. Technology affects our society as a whole. Medical and scientific advancement are reasons for celebration as humans move forward to a new era where innovation furthers human understanding and allows new possibilities to form. As we can already tell, anything that is going on, developing and emerging in science and technology has an impact on society because after all, it is we who create these changes from the advancements in medicine, technology, and environment. We can also say that science, technology, and society is dependent on each other because without any of this, we would not achieve where we are today in many things including the industrial revolution would not exist and happen. The essence of how science and technology contribute to society is the creation of new knowledge and the utilization of that knowledge to boost the prosperity of human lives and to solve the various issues facing society. The application of science affect virtually everyone like the agriculture and food production, the genetic research in medicine, global change, and energy that help to ground the discussion in real issues. The influence of science on people's lives is growing. While recent benefits to humanity are unparalleled in the history of the human species, in some instances, the impact has been harmful or the long-term effects give causes for serious concerns. A considerable measure of public mistrust of science and fear of technology exists today. In part, this stems from the belief by some individuals and communities that they will be the ones to suffer the indirect negative consequences of technical innovations introduced to benefit only a privileged minority. The power of science to bring about change places a duty on scientists to proceed with great caution, both in what they do and what they say. If we were to discuss the difference then and now, there will be a long list whether it's positive or negative things. In the current century, we are already in the modern world, and it will keep on progressing in different fields, and until then, we are not sure of what the future holds for society.